Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and it is my pleasure to have Philipp Samor von Holtzendorff-Fehling joining us again on this podcast. This time, we're going to go deeper into quantum energy, quantum healing, and all sorts of cool esoteric stuff. Philipp is a coach, conscious entrepreneur, and energy healer. In parallel to a successful international business career, he went through 2 decades of training in shamanic and other energy healing practices. During his business career, he worked as an executive for several well-known companies, including T-Mobile International and T-Mobile US, where he served as a vice president. He's the founder of Leela Quantum Tech and Quantum Upgrade. Philipp, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yes. Now, I want to start off this episode by encouraging our listener to have the willing suspension of disbelief, because that's where all the growth and the magic happens. It's not in the place of skepticism, cynicism, just being a crank, which I was before my awakening in 2012. I didn't believe in anything. You know how seeing is believing for some people? Well, believing is seeing for other people, because the belief actually opens up the portals and the gateways, and all the magic happens in this illusion called life. So I just want to invite our listener to do that before we start launching into all this wild stuff, esoteric stuff, and quantum energy and everything. So, anything that you want to share about the willing suspension of disbelief for our listener or viewer before we dive into some of the technology?
Yes, I think it's normal, right? And very, very common to not perceive energy, to not even believe in energy for the majority of the people. And we're living in extremely exciting times where it becomes more and more obvious that all we actually are is energy and frequency.
Mm.
So really it's just a process of remembering that and allowing that, and I think that will make it easier for people. And it's, if you feel that within you, that there's something more to it, don't be frustrated if you're not one of the ones that can perceive or see the energy right away. It takes practice. For the most people, really. Maybe there's 1 out of 1 billion that walks across the street and suddenly has this super enlightenment. That's not the norm, though. The norm is that we need to practice it. And I know what I'm talking about because I was there. I had forgotten all of it and I have remembered all of it. Maybe not all of it, but I would say most of it. And it is practice. So if I want to become a Wimbledon champion, I'm going to play tennis every day and I'm going to practice it. And what I can't do so well, I'm going to practice until I'm really good at it. Same with this. If I understand that there's the energy world, I can dive more into it and actually practice more of it.
Yeah. And what is practice for you? Is it meditation? Is it conducting experiments and having hypotheses and control groups, and taking the whole scientific route? Is it being in a place of openness and unconditional love? Combination of all the above? Something else? What is it for you?
Yeah, so unconditional love is nothing really that I think you can practice. It's just a state that you can arrive in.
Mm.
And you can try to practice it though, and to arrive at that state. It has changed for me over time, to be honest. It's now very different what I practice nowadays than it was 20 years ago. I started off with just reading some books where I felt, okay, there's some truth there, and I didn't understand it, so I wanted to learn more. And so I went into some books. I went into doing yoga, starting meditation. Then I went on and went actually to shamanic workshops, to past life regression work trainings and things like that. So I got trained in a lot of these practices. So then I practiced that a lot, to be honest. And nowadays, we're using our technology a whole lot, because our technology is able to increase the consciousness levels of locations, and not only locations. We can get more into that later,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all about consciousness anyway, right? So all we are, all God is infinite consciousness. God, you can replace that with spirit, universe, whatever you feel good about. God is a word that has been misused a lot, so it's sometimes misunderstood. I don't use it in that way though. And really, it's about unlocking our own consciousness, because the consciousness is always there anyway. It's never gone. It's just our conscious access to it, our conscious using of it, and opening up to that. That's the unlocking process. And yeah, with our technology, you can accelerate that process. You can support this training, if you will, of your inner voice, your inner power, that your consciousness can come through quicker. So that's a lot of what I do. I do Kundalini yoga. I'm a trained Kundalini yoga teacher. So those are some things I still do at least 3 times a week. And every now and then I also meditate. I should probably meditate more often, but still do it every now and then.
Yeah. I need to meditate more as well. I think probably everyone listening does too. Yeah. I've learned that meditating is like listening and praying is like speaking. So to have a two-way conversation, you need to communicate, you need to do both, listen and speak. And so when you're just praying and asking for stuff all the time, that's not really listening. And so, yeah, meditating is one way to do that. I get my downloads and insights and the impressions or nudges that I get, the intuition and intuitive hits that I get are all day long and throughout the day. So I don't take time to quiet my mind as much as I probably should, because it's not like I'm cut off from the creator when I'm not meditating. So I'm listening 24/7. It's just, it does get me to that place of being more in the present moment and less reliant on sensory inputs and more kind of outside of myself, more in that in the unified field, as Dr. Joe Dispenza calls it. Yeah. Speaking of Joe Dispenza, I know he's big on the quantum energy stuff and validating it and running these experiments and showing that this stuff works. Do you ever collaborate with him? Have you gone to any of his workshops? Do you like where does he fit into the into into your world?
Yeah, I feel we could possibly collaborate in the future. I've never met him. I've never feel drawn to go to any of his workshops, and I feel I actually don't need to. I would, if I went now, I probably would go to meet him.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to learn something, but yeah, no, I think he does great stuff, and yeah, I would love to meet him at some point.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of really great healers and intuitives and energy workers, light workers out there in the world, and I'm concerned that they get a lot of, I don't know if hate is the right word. It feels a little strong, but they get a lot of I don't know, negativity. Let's just say from people, either getting called a faker or scam artist, or being derided or ridiculed. It takes a lot of faith and courage to put yourself out there as somebody who believes in the unseen world, and it goes against the narrative. It goes against the narrative. It goes against some of the social norms, and even for those people who believe very strongly in God, they have a lot of potentially some will have a lot of rigidity and different defense mechanisms against hearing about the stuff that doesn't fit their narrative. How do you reach people who are shut off in that way? Because I even have family members that I really can't I can't talk to about this stuff, whether
Yeah.
they're devout in their religion or they are complete atheist or atheistic, or they just don't. I don't know. I have one family member that just doesn't like people. It's so strange. Like, well, I love animals. They're very sweet and kind, but boy, people can be so conniving and evil and everything. I just stay away from them. It's like, oh, but you gotta know that you can't change everybody. You can't save the world, and it all starts with you and changing the world within. So, have you had any epiphanies that you want to share with our listener about, I don't know, going from a place of trying to change everybody and change the world to a place of exploring the infinite within?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's indeed the case that it's not the norm. It's not so accepted. When I was in corporate, I was a vice president at T-Mobile internationally, and you know, also on the board of other big companies, and I was already on the journey to doing shamanic workshops and doing energy healing and all of that on the side. I could not, you know, be my full self in these organizations, nor even, openly talk about it. And that was one of the reasons where in 2016 I decided to just not do it anymore, because I wanted to be myself everywhere and all the time and didn't want to hide anything. Think things are changing now really on earth, and quite rapidly, frankly.
Yeah,
We I mean, time is so anyway, it's just a time exists here in the 3D world, and then it appears to be that it takes so long, right? It takes so long for people to wake up and all of that, but that's just a perception. I think things are, if we compare it in these terms, moving quite rapidly, and where they're moving is that we realize more and more who we truly are, and we are energy and frequencies. There's That's all we are, and it's the truth, and then that will come through more and more, and it's the time, it's the flow of the creation, where this
yeah,
is going. So we don't need to
yeah.
convince anybody, because everybody will at some point be part of this flow, and you can't resist it anymore. At some point there's still people that resist it, that even go against it completely, but they need to use a lot more energy each day in order to keep resisting that.
Mm,
So what we've done is we've created technology that can actually help us on this path, help us, do consciousness work 24/7 all the time, without really having to dedicate a lot of our own time. Even though if we do that, then it works even better. But those are tools that actually work, but they're not for everybody, because you have probably still the majority out there that is saying, well, like the healers, that, I mean, they can maybe heal someone from a untreatable disease, and then people would still call that luck, or yeah, it was something else. But hey, that's what people would say about our technology too. But those people, I don't need to convince them.
yeah,
It's their own tragedy in a way, that they can't open their mind to this, and that they need to stay with whatever is presented with the mainstream narrative, and what's ever there in terms of those tools. Then yeah, go use those tools, keep using those tools of the old world, and see where it leads you. And then it may lead you to a point where you get extremely sick at some point, and that's going to be your waking up moment. It's like for everyone, it's different, but we indeed can't save anybody. And I don't even make an effort to do that. I make a big effort to talk about it and to openly present what we know, what we experience, and try to speak from the heart as much as possible so that people maybe hear it from the heart as well. And
Yeah.
that's how they can experience our products. We even go so far that we say, well, we know already what the products do, but we put a lot of work into hiring institutes and asking doctors' offices to test and study our products, even up to randomized double blind studies, so that people have something for their mind, because we understand you also need something for your brain. Just me
Yeah.
telling you that something works, yeah, anybody could possibly do that, but we put a lot of effort into that to also cater to these people and to give them the chance to take a look at that, and then they discover a new world. But
Mm.
whoever's then not on board, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. We'll get into this in just a minute, the technology and how it works. But a couple of thoughts before that, just to close out this part of the discussion. You said earlier we're just energy and frequency, and that reminds me of a quote I heard from Wayne Dyer that it goes something like this: "We're not human beings having a spiritual experience; we are spiritual beings having a human experience." And
Yes.
another thing was, I think this just comes from Einstein's equation of E equals mc squared, is matter is simply slowed down energy, massively slowed down energy. But it also, from a practical standpoint, is like we're um, we're trying to move around in quicksand or move around in a big vat of muck. And it's very slow and it's arduous, but it is the best school to be able to learn how to grow and evolve our souls. If everything's easy and flowing and we're just this being of light that remembers everything, which we are, but then we don't have access to those memories or that realization while we're here in the muck doing our work. That's where we use our muscle and we strengthen it, and we break through to the next level. So that's just what I wanted to share about what we've been talking about before we move into your tech. So
Yes.
if you were to describe to a layperson who doesn't understand energy healing or quantum physics, quantum mechanics, what would you say is the practical application of what you've developed? You've got two different technologies or companies. One, Leela Quantum Tech, was what we spoke about in episode 336. That's the quantum box. It's called an infinity block, or the smaller one is the quantum block. So we went into some depth on that, but then there's the other technology which we're going to talk about in this episode, which is called quantum upgrade. And so, what would be your elevator uh, speech, elevator pitch to somebody who doesn't understand this world of energy?
Hmm. So yeah, so we leverage this underlying technology of Leela Quantum Tech and have developed it further and really enhanced it in order to do quite amazing things in regards to quantum entanglement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do I explain this now to someone who has no clue what that even means? With our technology, we've been able to concentrate pure natural quantum energy in such a fashion like no one else has done it before that we know of. So it's not at least that technology may be out there somewhere, but not publicly available anywhere. And what happens if you, and by the way, quantum energy, for you to understand out there, it's the energy behind the matter, and it's the energy that we have in each of our cells. So all of our cells communicate all the time, constantly, through these quantum fields that they have. And that very same energy is the energy that we were able to harness and concentrate in that technology. And what happens is that there's a multidimensional quantum energy space in there, and it literally inside there, time and distance don't matter, and you can do something called quantum entanglement with it. So if you want to read more about quantum entanglement, you can, because that's not a new concept. It really has been proven multiple times in various labs before. And what's new is, though, that we have been able to find a way how we can leverage it in order to provide, I was about to say healing, but certainly publicly we don't want to use that word. So to provide information and to balance out systems or objects or physiological organisms, and actually increase the consciousness levels, measurable. Like you can absolutely measure it. You can measure the consciousness levels that these fields provide, and you can measure the output even of your blood. You could look at your blood as an example, or heart rate variability, things like that, and you can see what it does. We'll go into that. So the quantum entanglement, through that, we can send energy to basically any location in the world or any living being, as long as we have a clear signal. So for you, it would have to be your first name and your last name and your date of birth. And then, just in case to not mix up anybody, we also ask for the birth city and the country that you live in. That's a completely unique identifier, if you will. And then we can, through that technology, send the energy exactly to you at all the time that you want it, because you can, on your end, customize it in a way that's it's completely unheard of. It's like there's nothing else out there where you can even change the different levels of consciousness over time, or set different values for the nighttime, because that energy can be quite stimulating, right? Because you have more energy, and you literally, you can feel it. If you're somewhat sensitive, you feel it, but you may not want to have so much of it at nights when you want to sleep, so you can set it to lower. All
Mm.
these things, so that is possible through that technology. And yeah, again, we have studies to back that up. It sounds like magic, but it's, there's actually another quote, and I'll have to send you that quote, unless I did already. um, I guess it says, every truly advanced technology um, is indistinguishable from magic. I
Yes.
forgot who it said, but
Arthur C.
it's,
Clarke.
yeah, it's a great quote, and
Yep.
it is what it is. And I think in 10 years we'll be able to explain way better what we're doing than now, because now it's so experiential. You can really experience it. It's so hard to find the words to explain it to someone. Like, how do you explain a chocolate cake to someone that has never ever seen or eaten a cake in his or her life before? It's just going to be a struggle. And that's the same thing. Go to the 1600s and talk about the latest iPhone and what it can do. People just won't grasp it. And that's maybe because we're so cutting edge in our technology, a little bit the struggle that we have. How do we explain it all? But yeah, there's a lot that we can verify.
Yeah. That this reminds me, when you're talking about getting a person's date of birth and their birth city and so forth, in order to get a clear signal so that you can send them this quantum energy and not mistakenly send it to someone else. It's very similar to any kind of energy healing or um, reading, psychic reading, or something like that, where they want to get a clear signal, and so they ask for information like that, and they don't ask for anything else. I remember getting a medical intuitive reading, or medical intuition reading from Katie Beecher, and she is phenomenal. I've sent a number of people to her. She was a past guest on this podcast, and she sent 4 pages of write up that, unless she somehow broke into my medical records, like, she couldn't have possibly known this stuff. It was incredible. And the same thing with my wife, Orion. She had a reading that was spookily or eerily accurate. It was incredible. And she didn't interview us ahead of time, didn't speak to us at all. The first time we had a conversation with her was to review the 4-page report with her and ask any questions we had about it. It was wild. So all she needed was date of birth, I think maybe time of birth, and a location or city of birth, and full name. Yep. Another example is an Akashic Records reading. Nina Banday had a fantastic reading of me that she did remotely, just over a write up again, and she just needed the date of birth, time of birth, and so forth. So she tuned in, and it's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing. So it makes sense to me that you need that that clear signal. Another example, a little different though. Uh, Laura Stinchfield. So she is a famous pet psychic. In fact, I just got a reading from her today. Talked to some of my animals, and she needed a picture of the animal. And if we had a date of birth, that's great, but it's not necessary. But the picture where we could show in the picture the animal's eyes, because you know what they say, the eyes are the windows to the soul. That allowed her to establish that clear signal. And
Yes.
the stuff that she was able to share, she couldn't have possibly known. She couldn't have possibly made up. Things like using a term that she would never have heard before, because Orion made it up with this duck that we raised from a duckling, and the term was wormies. It was just a cute way of referring to freeze-dried grubs that that Coco the duck loved to eat, and she used it in the reading. Like, how do you make that up? It's not even possible.
Yeah,
It's amazing. So let's talk a
indeed.
bit about quantum entanglement and its practical applications, because uh, even Albert Einstein didn't really understand quantum entanglement with his beautiful mind. He just called it spooky action at a distance, at least initially. It's something just too fanciful and fantastical to really wrap his mind around, and so he pretty much dismissed it. But it's where we understand that things can happen simultaneously or outside of normal time. Like, we can send healing to an ancestor, and for our ancestral lineage to get healed, even though it happened in the past. Yeah, that's possible. It's incredible. So you can say a prayer for someone who passed on centuries ago and have that affect them in the past, because past, present, future is all happening simultaneously. Time is just an illusion. So if somebody is not really grokking what quantum entanglement is, they can grok that things can happen instantly. Things can work outside of time, of normal linear constructs. So let's talk a little bit about that. What would be some examples of things that could be addressed through quantum entanglement that might seem outside of normal logic?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different applications. So I start with one that is really you can help plants grow faster. and actually better and be in much more physical power with quantum entanglement. You can do a support also for any other physiological organism, including us humans, right? And so, um, what we already knew and what was now validated in actually two randomized, sham controlled, that means placebo controlled, double blind studies was actually looking at blood. So you had someone that was where the blood was tested, and there was no quantum entanglement through our technology happening. And then 10 minutes later, the person had no idea what would happen or if anything would even happen. Nor did the person in the room that was guiding them, because that means it was really truly double blind and not only single blind, which is already great. And then our technology was applied, and then very suddenly the blood improved significantly, like literally improved significantly over um, the next few minutes. And it was that all the red blood cells improved in a way where they showed a quite distorted and difficult, and some cases almost dangerous blood picture before. And after, it looked almost perfect. Like the red blood cells had a shape that they were supposed to have. There was no clotting anymore. Stage 1 and stage 2 of blood clotting was able to be reversed. And even things like the cholesterol levels went down quite significantly, parasitic load went down significantly, and the white blood cell activity and motility also increased in all cases, all in just a matter of minutes. And each and every time, like literally, we still have to find a single person where that doesn't work in such a significant way.
Mm.
We're not talking about, yeah, this works like 15% of the time, which probably people will be like, well, this is great. No, 100% of the time, 100% of the time so far, this has happened. And yeah, so it's quite significant. So that's what you could do. You could charge, your phone over the distance, your car even, and something like your business. So we have a business subscription, because a business, and a location, by the way, so you can have it for your home, and then basically your whole property will receive that energy at all the times that you want it, at the level of consciousness that you set yourself. And yeah, business is another one that is possible. Those are the practical applications.
So, and I've signed up over the weekend. I signed up for um, the business and for me personally, and yeah, I feel like it's doing something. I'm pretty attuned to energy, and I'm very intuitive, so um, I think I can notice stuff more than typical, but it definitely feels different. Just like I'd put in an object into the infinity block, like a necklace or pendant or something, a crystal, whatever, and I would feel the energy on that object once I put it on or held it in my hand. So that's not necessarily what everybody can do, but I've had other people come who came to the house and put objects into the Infinity Block, and so that's your sister company, the other company, uh, Leela Quantum Tech, that makes these Infinity Blocks, and yeah, they felt it too. Not everybody, but the majority of the people. Now, I don't offer it to people who I don't think are really receptive to it. So it's not like a scientifically validated thing. This is just anecdotal, but I've had multiple people try out the Infinity Block when they came over and they felt something. Anyway, so this idea of your business can get um, quantum energy sent to it is not It's not nonsense. You can say a prayer for your business. You can change the way that you think of your business to be you're a steward for God's business. You could actually invite God to be your business partner. I've done that. He is my business partner, and it changes the field of and the business inside the field to have that happen. So why wouldn't sending quantum energy to a particular business where you've got the details of it, so you can, as you said earlier, identify it, send a clear signal just to that business, and not mistakenly send it to another business with a similar sounding name? It works. Why wouldn't it work? Like, we're much more powerful than we could imagine. So I'm curious to hear what would be some examples of just anecdotal things that have happened for people who have um, signed up with their business to get. Uh, oh, and by the way, it's another thing that's really cool. I didn't know about until last year. Is you can open the Akashic records of your business or creative work, like a book. You
Yeah.
have a
So
book that you're working on. You can open the Akashic records of the book. That's really cool.
yeah, because a business is like a bundle of energy. And so here we're not talking about a specific location. A business can have a lot of remote workers, can have 3, 4, 5 locations, and all of that. None of that really matters, because in the end of the day, it's just a whole like big bubble of energy, or somewhat it's a form of energy, and it's moving, and it has certainly a story, right? And it has um, things that are happening, and it has alignment, or all of these different things. And then you have the parts and aspects that are somewhat involved, right? You have the owners, you have employees, then you even have customers, you have your products. All these things, all these aspects matter. It's like our physical body that has, you have a nose, you have hands, all of these different parts. And you asked a great question, why wouldn't it work? And that's actually, once you understand the whole thing, it's like it couldn't actually be any other way. So it's sometimes hard to explain, but it really couldn't be any other way. So with a business, what happens there? First of all, it's one where the pure quantum energy that we work with, it's pure consciousness. It doesn't support anything that is harmful or destructive to life and to consciousness. But on the reverse, it supports and underlines and amplifies everything that is supportive to life and to consciousness. And that applies also here. So that's, by the way, one of those reasons why the blood changes so to the positive, and that even your, parasitic load and things like that decrease, just because it brings it into its full potential. And then it does that with the business as well. So it literally helps that energy to move a business towards expansion and prosperity. And expansion, I don't mean this in this way of, how you would look at it. Okay, I need to expand to Europe, I need to expand to Asia, and all, that's like the business expansion. I mean this in a much broader way, where the idea, the business itself, can naturally expand much better in its full potential, in its optimal way.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what happens. But there's a big but. You cannot do anything manipulative and or evil in your company that is destructive or harmful per se to life or the lives of others or to consciousness, because otherwise that will get transformed as long as you want this quantum upgrade. It's a powerful statement, but that's pretty much what happens. So if you sign up for this and you have a business, you either should be a rather conscious business or a conscious entrepreneur already, or you would want to move to be a more conscious company, to be a more conscious entrepreneur, and you have good intentions, right? If you have very bad intentions and you're trying to rip people off, our service is not going to help you. Our service is just going to help you to transform the way you do it and how you do it, and it's just going to kick out everything that does these things.
Mhm.
um so it's actually quite powerful. It's subtle, but it's powerful and it's noticeable. So owners tell us, um so if you're an owner, you're listening, you have a business, then you know that sometimes, so all your action that you take comes from a place of energy. You're moving energy. You're thinking, you're envisioning something, and then you're going to move energy, and you move that energy, and then you take it into action. You do this or you do that. You fire that person, you hire that person, because of an impulse, you speak with that person. All came because there was some energetic intention and then movement, right? And often in between, you may find, wow, the business is lacking right now. Something is not going the way, it's stuck in a way, there's no flow. And then as you're doing this energetically as the owner to try to steer things up again, to move the things again so that the business can move, that becomes a lot easier for every owner, because the quantum field itself takes on a lot of that already, so that you can actually be much more relaxed in your actions, and you don't have to pull and push that hard anymore. You're just letting it go, and then you're being creative and you're adding your impulses and doing all of that. Becomes a lot easier. Employees notice it. Employees notice it. We have, I don't know how many companies we have signed up already, but there's some bigger companies and some smaller companies. And we had a company that literally had a product line that was sort of like a old car parked on a parking lot, and it just wouldn't do anything, and it didn't even have a purpose anymore, really. And that's how the employees also felt. And suddenly this energy moved, and it found its purpose again, and the employees actually noticed that, and with that also found that. So this is becoming more like a startup environment suddenly, again, energetically. And through that energy suddenly that's there, these actions in the outer world happen. So that's as much as I can tell. It's probably the service that I don't know if we'll ever be able to prove that it actually works. I mean, we're thinking about that and how to do that, and we actually have several businesses that had some ideas, but it's going to be probably hard to do that. It's way easier for us to prove, okay, what happens with the blood, what happens with your brain waves, what happens with your heart rate variability. These things are super easy to measure if you think about it.
Right.
And yeah,
Yeah, it's very
but
hard
it
for a
still
business
works. It still works.
to show this. Uh, to say that like, how do you even do a double blind study? But what comes to mind is the concept of a prayer chain. People who believe in God will not even question whether this works. They know it. Every prayer is heard. Not every prayer is necessarily answered in the way that we want it to be, but every single prayer is heard. So why form a prayer chain so that people can all together pray for a particular loved one who's going through a health crisis or some sort of troubling times? Because they know it works. They know their prayers are heard, and they know that
Yes.
it amplifies the effect to have more people praying. So why wouldn't it work to have a business as the recipient of this beautiful energy, and not necessarily just a human? Yeah, really cool.
Yes, and so for people also to understand, yeah, I totally agree. And then David Hawkins is someone that wrote the book Power versus Force. And
Yeah.
if you're interested in this type of topic and about consciousness levels, you may want to read that book, or even easier, get the audio version. And then you need to go get through the first, I think, like 15 minutes or so, and then it starts to become extremely interesting and fascinating. And it's amazing what work Dr. David Hawkins had done and what he had all studied. And it's very interesting, the consciousness scale that he set up, basically.
Right.
And on that scale, like we used to operate with the actual quantum consciousness levels, but that most people didn't understand that really, because they can't see quantum consciousness levels, but they can relate to David Hawkins' scale. A lot of people have read that book, or at least have seen the scale, and they
Mm.
know, oh, okay, that's kind of what it means. And now we actually calibrate these levels based on the Hawkins scale, so we can tell people it's on this level on the Hawkins scale, and so on. And if you think about it, you can set normal levels to even 900 for a business. And once you understand the concept, you understand, wow, what that actually means if you can have that in your home or in your business, and what that can do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think 700 is where enlightenment starts on the scale of 0 to 1,000. Is that right?
That is correct. And so we've been able to prove actually that our technology can go way above 1000
Mm.
already. So it actually, in that sense, breaks the Hawkins scale. But that's because of two reasons. Hawkins wrote the book, I don't know, maybe like 20 years ago. At that time on Earth, actually, no physical object or person was able to vibrate any higher as than 1000. That has massively changed now, because Earth itself has transformed significantly since then.
Yeah.
And completely different levels of consciousness and vibration are now possible here. So so he couldn't actually at that time even see further. So it's not like a miss on his end. It's just people don't be closed-minded and
Yeah.
think that it can only go until 1000 because that's what Hawkins said at the time. No, it actually can, and people can calibrate it easily, actually.
Remember back in the day, people didn't believe that someone could
Oh,
run a sub 4 minute mile until that was then broken by one person,
yeah.
and then a whole bunch of other people broke it. So, uh, yeah, we're
Yes.
limitless. We really are.
Yeah. And it's so in so it's all about vibration and the consciousness level in
Yeah.
the
And you
end.
said
And
something too that
that's
it's
kind
really
of
important for
what.
our listener to grok, and that is that it's subtle. Subtle energy is like the still small voice that's mentioned in the Bible, that, God's not going to say to you in a booming voice, or like have a burning bush in front of you to speak to you. It's going to be a very subtle thing. And you need to become a detective of what is subtle, and not ignore that stuff, because that's where you end up in trouble. Like, oh, I should have listened to my intuition. I should have turned left today instead of right, and I just did the same old, and then I got in this terrible car crash, even though my intuition told me not to do it, to go a different route. You gotta listen to that stuff.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And that's, that's an amazing fun part, actually, to start listening more to our inner voice and to this subtleness of what's there. That can be quite an amazing journey.
Mm.
And if we ignore it for too long, and longer, at some point we'll get that burning bush. But then
Right.
that burning bush may fall on our head, and we may not like it. So it's way easier to get in tune with ourselves. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
when you still have the chance and you don't have to.
That
So
reminds me of a story that or like an analogy I learned at a conference, or a workshop called Next Level Experience. And the speaker, I don't remember who it was, but he said that the universe, God will drop little um, hints, like they're feathers falling on your shoulder. And you can ignore those, but then they become bricks eventually. And when the bricks land on you, they really hurt. And you can ignore those if you want to, but then it becomes a Mack truck, and that can't be ignored. And that might be the thing that ultimately takes you out. But it certainly is a wake up call. And I wouldn't wish a Mack truck on anybody, but sometimes it's the only way to get through to the person if they're that out of tune and out
Yes.
of or that much asleep, like autopilot.
Yeah, I just wanted to, before we, part ways today, mention at least for you listeners that, we set up a free trial for this quantum upgrade. Obviously, with Leela Quantum Tech, we've talked about that at some point, and that's really nothing you can trial unless you try it at a conference where we are and you test these things or you actually get a product. With Quantum Upgrade, it's possible you sign up for a 7-day free trial and then you get to experience what levels you can set, and you can get to experience also the energy. And yeah, you may not be so sensitive, but you may actually become more sensitive already in those 7 days where you notice it. If you do that and you're totally new to this, though, then please drink a lot of water in the first week or two, because you can have some detoxing and all of that. And it's a lot of energy. Even though we don't feel it, it's the subtle energy, but you want to drink a lot of water. And yeah, you can give that a try and then feel for yourself, because we thought that's the best way, because it's something that you want to experience.
Yeah.
And
So that's
yeah,
at
so that's what I wanted to
quantumupgrade.io.
share.
Quantumupgrade.io.
Yes, .io, that's the important part. And there is a Telegram group actually out there. It has grown quite rapidly. We didn't want to do one at first, but then people actually requested it, and it became a nice way of talking about it and asking questions, answering questions. And I can provide you with a link to that Telegram group also. If someone is interested, feel free
Yeah,
to
awesome.
join.
We'll include that in the show notes as well. All right, fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Philip. And I again want to encourage you, listener, to have the willing suspension of disbelief. And what's the harm to try something like this out? You got a 7-day free trial. Like, there's no downside I can see. Anyways, thanks for being open minded, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Lots of love and light. This is your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.